On August 12, 1920, Lieutenant William Maxwell was making an emergency landing in the Philippines when he spotted a group of children on the ground. To avoid crashing into them, Maxwell flew into a flagpole, something hard to distinguish from a field of sugarcane. The lieutenant died instantly. 59 years later, family, friends, and airmen gathered to pay tribute to the young man who took his own life to save others. More than 150 persons honored Lieutenant Maxwell at his gravesite in the Robinsonville Baptist Church Cemetery near Atmore. The Dedalians, a fraternal order of military pilots, sponsored the memorial. Lieutenant General Stanley Umstead recounted young Maxwell's life and how his memory inspires other airmen to do their best. Former U.S. Senator Lister Hill spoke of how the Montgomery facility had been named Maxwell Air Force Base and of the leaders that have passed through its doors. Lieutenant Maxwell's two surviving sisters, Mrs. Mattie Lee Snuggs of Birmingham and Mrs. E.M. Parker of Punta Gorda, Florida, helped unveil a memorial plaque on their brother's grave. Two airmen played taps as a final tribute to Lieutenant Maxwell. From the Robinsonville Baptist Church near Atmore, Alabama, Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
How was yesterday at Niagara Falls?
No, it was fine. Yeah, it was nice because it got a big old lot of noise, and it make us little loud sound, you know?
Yeah?
It was wonderful.
Big waterfall.
Yeah,
huh?
it is a big waterfall. It is.
You have a good time?
Yes, I sure am.
How about you?
The water fountain,
What'd you win the medals in?
50 yard and softball though.
I got you. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was nice. I
Where-
enjoyed myself.
Where are you from?
I'm from Off Alabama.
Good old Off Alabama.
Yeah.
Say hello to everybody down in good old Off Alabama.
Hi, what's happening, everybody?
Okay. Which one is the one for the high jump?
Either one.
Either one, doesn't matter, huh?
Yeah.
What was it, 6'2"?
6'2".
A record for Special Olympics, huh?
Yes, sir.
How long you think it'll last?
It'll last until I come back again.
Oh, 4 years, huh?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Glad to have you home.
This special test was only the second live jump with a Koenig low-altitude parachute designed by Christian Koenig, a former Army intelligence officer. The chute has been cited as one of the most significant investments in military parachute design since World War II. Koenig got the idea several years ago while still in the service.
It started in Vietnam when I saw a couple of guys a couple of helicopters get shot down over there, and 7 of the 8 people were killed, and it's something you push in the back of your mind that you know, something really ought to be done about it.
After climbing to an altitude of only 500 feet, that's 700 feet lower than normal jump altitudes for paratroopers, Jim Kaiser, an associate of Koenig's, bailed out. Strategically placed cells attached to the canopy forces the chute open even when it's not in line with the wind. The trip back to Earth took just over 23 seconds. The test was a success. The U.S. Army, who had representatives at today's demonstration, will soon begin their own test. This will be followed by more testing conducted by the Air Force and Navy. The Canadian Armed Forces have also asked to test the parachute that was designed in Christian Koenig's attic in Prattville, Alabama. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
came from Livingston Parish, Louisiana, the seed did, and according to all the research that's been done by some of the leading geneticists in the southeast, it indicates that this is one of the best sources of seed in the south.
Who was the valedictorian. She came forth with a prepared and very beautiful presentation. It spoke of all of the problems. If I simply tonight underlined what she said, I am seldom at a loss for words, but it is time that we look at the question of specialization in some of our institutions. I wonder how many of you could guess the number of colleges we have that offer, public colleges that offer, degrees in business administration. Would you guess 5 out of the 14, or 8, or 12? It's 14, I think. Only 3 or 4 are accredited. It is not worth elaborating on, it's so obvious. The quality of our effort just in that one program would be much better if consolidated into fewer schools than it could possibly be diluted out among so many. We have 5 or 6 engineering schools where the same is true. In Georgia, if you want to study engineering at a public institution, you can go to Georgia Tech or you don't get to go anyplace. They centralized it all there, and they have a rated school of engineering, 5th in the nation.
There's one member of the platform party who has never been here before, namely myself. So you must bear with me.
Doctor of Laws, with all of the rights and privileges thereunto appertaining. Moody, the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws, with all of the rights and privileges thereunto appertaining.
Caroline Smith told the Public Service Commission South Central Bell doesn't need $22 million of the increase it's asking for. She said the telephone company wants to return a 14.5% to 15% profit to investors, when 11% is more in line with profit returns in other states. She said her figures, compiled partly from her experience when she was with the Texas Public Service Commission, differ from phone company figures because they can't agree on how much profit it takes for people to continue investing with the company. The consulting firm Dr. Smith works for also is arguing that the phone company is overstating the cost of capital. South Central Bell lawyers cross-examined Dr. Smith, saying her method of determining profit requirements is faulty. The Public Service Commission will continue hearing testimony this week. Their final decision on whether to allow the rate hike must come before November 28th. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Again, he's wrong, which he always puts his monumental ignorance on display. There are 5 members of the City Council Finance Committee. There were 2 present. 2 is not a quorum of any committee. I was very careful, and I'm always very careful, not to have a quorum of any committee or council present. And if he would do his homework, he would, save us all a lot of trouble. But his whole forte is to run around half-cocked like he is on this, because the law is plain, and I'm reading from it. We did not have a quorum either of the council or the committee. We're delighted to see him in court.
With a broad smile, Congressman Bill Dickinson revealed the Air Force's future plans for both Maxwell and Gunter Air Force bases. Dickinson says these plans are a solid turn for the facilities, $43 million worth of proposed permanent improvements.
That's what this represents. Brick and mortar money, permanent construction and renovation of existing facilities. Has nothing to do with personnel, nothing to do with the expenditure on the facilities, the curricula, the students that will be there and so forth. This is permanent capital improvements there.
The proposal's first phase is construction already in progress at the base. That totals just over $3 million. For the year 1980, construction plans would include some entirely new facilities. These projects would total $10 million. A massive study on long-range needs proposes some 13 major construction projects, these during the next 20 years. These plans include an additional 4 projects for Gunter Air Force Base. The combined projects total $30 million. Mayor Emery Farmer says this ensures the base's future in Montgomery.
I think that this will ensure the continued real viable operation at Maxwell Air Force Base, and this is what we're all so concerned about. And my thanks to you, Congressman, and to the senators. I think this is just great.
All of these proposals are Air Force plans that must still receive congressional approval. Dickinson was optimistic about that. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Well, as you know, that did not come about, and also our budget was looked at. The operating center was 100% money, and the need to change this policy to go to 100% even in the pilot project.
We got him about Betty. All manner of small. I don't know whether we're going to have a quick draw contest. Included my budget message with the words of the psalmist, except the Lord build the house.
Fine example of the type of police department that we have in this type of crime.
We need people who are doing the type of work that she's doing.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
This budget is very tight, and the increase over last year's budget is small. However, our revenues have not increased as they did last year. Therefore, to guarantee fiscal soundness, we have not been able to fund everything we wanted to. This budget does contain sufficient funds for all city forces to perform their missions. As mayor, I pledge to you that we will be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. I, along with the department heads, will work to ensure that our citizens continue to get a dollar's worth of service for every tax dollar. It were near emergencies, but not real emergencies. We've been able to pay those and at the same time discharge our accrued liability for Kelly days by paying them off from the reserves approved in the fiscal year 79 budget. Our auditors have recommended for the past 2 years that we do this as an additional strengthening of our fiscal foundation. The proposed 79-80 budget of $41,371,234 is $1,007,720. insurance costs.
The Sober campaign was officially kicked off with a luncheon for its organizers. The Sober group is hoping to cut down the number of alcohol-related traffic deaths on Alabama highways during the Labor Day weekend. At least one person is killed every day on the state's roads in an alcohol-related accident. Among those on hand today were Senator Pat Vaca of Birmingham, honorary chairman of the Sober campaign, and representatives of the outdoor advertising industry, the beer and wine wholesalers, the State Beverage Control Board, and the insurance industry. Captain John Henderson, commander of the State Troopers Safety Education Unit, says there is no greater problem needing attention than alcohol and driving.
In the last survey that our department made in conjunction with the Alabama State Department of Toxicology, we found that in excess of 60% of the traffic fatalities in this state were alcohol related.
Not only does alcohol claim its toll in lives, but also in dollars. $400 million in auto insurance premiums were paid in Alabama last year. Of that $400 million, 65% was repaid in claims to customers. The Sober campaign workers feel that if one life is saved through their efforts, it will all be worthwhile. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
Dr. James Foy is the Executive Secretary to Governor Fob James, and in that role, he's responsible for budgetary matters of the office. Recently, the State Budget Office reported to the Governor's office funds available in the last 2 months of the fiscal year. Of the original $1.4 million available, Foy calculates less than $250,000 is left. The Governor's office operates under several different budgets. The actual Governor's office budget of $1.1 million, the contingency fund $115,000, the emergency fund $100,000, the mansion fund $45,000, and $30,000 to pay the state's dues to the National Governors Association. According to Foy, personnel costs make up the largest chunk of the budget. He pointed out that when the present administration took over in January, about 12 of the employees were borrowed from other state agencies.
Now, we still have about 4 people in the governor's office paid from other departments. And the governor wants to, as soon as we can get these things worked out, to have it so that the governor's office will budget all the people working here.
So far this fiscal year, over $600,000 has been spent on employee salaries. Other large expenses include $200,000 to issue proclamations, $19,221 for printing, $12,365 for gasoline, $68,000 for telephones, and $155,000 in advertising for constitutional amendments. Foy says they hope the advertising will be paid by another agency next year. Governor James campaigned on running the state like a business, and Foy says when it comes to trimming budgets, the governor's office is going to practice what it preaches. Dr. Foy points with pride at the budget accomplishments made by the governor's office this year in their inherited budget, and next year he says they plan to do even better, realizing a 10% reduction over this year's budget. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the governor's office.
The White House calls the multi-million-dollar project the Family Farm Cooperative Program. A Carter aide describes it as a turning point in the effort to revitalize the small family farm and to reverse the flow of low-income farmers from the country to the city. A new corporation, the Small Farm Development Corporation, will operate the program. The corporation, made up of 4 federal agencies, will buy 1,200-acre tracts of land in Alabama, Florida, and Louisiana. Macon and Bullock counties have been mentioned as possible sites here in Alabama. About 40 farmers will be selected to participate in the program. The farmers will be employed by the corporation and will undergo a year of training in agricultural techniques. The participants will live in a community setting during the training, with the corporation providing housing, transportation, medical facilities, and other social services. After the training period ends, the successful participants will be offered loan assistance to buy the land, if they agree to continue in the farm cooperative. This process will be repeated twice during the 6-year-long program. In addition to the 4 federal agencies in the corporation, assistance is being provided by the Ford Foundation, the Southern Development Foundation, and the Nation of Israel. Israel has been very successful with family farm cooperatives. A spokesman for the Southern Development Foundation in Lafayette, Louisiana, says the Family Farm Cooperative Program should get underway by spring of 1980. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
It's very important, I think, to concentrate on the fact that they're not going to be so-called, I understand Dr. Hubbard likes to call them experts, who will come in from Montgomery and say, you do this and you do that and you do another thing, because any fool knows that if we use that approach, as soon as the so-called experts are gone, everyone will return to doing what they were doing before. What we plan to do with these 32 team members is to have them work together with the local teachers, to involve the local teachers in the development of curriculum programs, which will continue once the team members leave, because the local teachers will have been involved in the creation of the programs.
Well, it came to our attention, we knew this unofficially, but it came to our attention that there were two members of the city's budget committee, John Starr and Elise Reynolds, present during the meeting, in addition to Mayor Fulmer, who hosted the meeting, and we have found additional law to support our position that even city committees, duly appointed committees, are subject to the Alabama Sunshine Law. And inasmuch as a quorum of this budget committee was present, deciding the disbursement of city funds and taxpayers' money, we amended the complaint to ask for declaratory judgment and injunctive relief against those three additional defendants.
The Public Service Commission heard more testimony that South Central Bell is producing a higher rate of return to investors than is necessary. An economist from a consulting firm testified for the Attorney General's office that the phone company doesn't need a $63 million rate increase, and in fact should reduce rates by $19 million. The economist said one problem is the company's tax deferment policy.
Under the company's proposed treatment, taxes which will be due and payable in the future are being collected from today's ratepayer. And it also means that today's ratepayer is going to bear a burden of additional taxes for the very provision of these deferred taxes. That is, today's ratepayers are going to be required to pay $2, so $1 will be available to future ratepayers to pay the deferred tax expense.
Phone company spokesmen say the idea of reducing rates is preposterous.
We are abiding by the tax laws that exist right now. They may have some ideas on how the tax laws should be written and on how the tax laws should exist, but what we're doing is we're keeping our books, we're accounting for our taxes the way the IRS says we're supposed to do it.
Somerville says if the phone company followed Galligan's proposals, it could owe back taxes worth $120 million. The hearing is expected to wind up tomorrow. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Houston County and the state of Alabama have another first in this emergency evacuation plan in case the Walter F. George Dam on the Chattahoochee River should burst. The dam is located up the river from Houston County. County and state civil defense officials have developed a plan, the first in the nation, to cope with a major breach of the dam, which is located at the southern end of Lake Eufaula. Houston County Civil Defense Director Jim Aldridge says, like their emergency plan for the Farley nuclear power plant, the plan for the dam depends upon notification.
The main element would be notification by the Corps of Engineers or by the dam operator. If they begin to find something wrong with the dam, an impending disaster situation, they have to have a chain of command to notify, and then we have to have a plan of action to be able to remove the citizens or to notify the citizens to get them out of the floodplain area.
Within the boundary of Houston County is the Farley nuclear power plant. The emergency plan for coping with a disaster at this plant was recently revised, and county officials expect a test of the plan soon. Lawrence Bowden of the State Civil Defense Department says Alabama may be behind in some areas, but in civil defense, we are near the top.
We can point with pride in Alabama to say, as far as a fixed nuclear facilities, that is, the power plants are concerned, that we had the first plan that was approved by the Atomic Energy Commission for the evacuation of an area around such a facility. And, of course, the plan for Houston County, the evacuation of the area below the Walter F. George Dam, is the first plan of that type in the nation. So we feel like we're well abreast of emergency procedures, and with the limited staff and the money we have, that we're doing a good job.
Bowden says other areas in the state will soon develop emergency evacuation plans for other dams. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
as of now, no. They only requested 47. We're saying those will be opened and monitored very closely. So what I'm saying, I'm for duplication has been overdone, I think. I'll stand and fall on quality. If any of these branches are not quality, if they don't have qualified instructors, they're not fulfilling the number of hours they're supposed to put out there, I'll move with all vigor to close it. But let's face the facts. As I said here in the meeting today, the four-year universities have not served the needs that these branches are serving. So the duplication within the same town, to me, is not a valid criteria anymore.
The first South Central Bell witness to offer rebuttal testimony in their rate case was the company's chief accountant, Jack Lester. Lester's testimony dealt specifically with challenging each suggestion offered the day before by Dr. Marvin Kahn, a witness arguing against the increase. Lester was animate at times, using words like irresponsible, preposterous, absurd, flippant, and incompetent in describing the manner in which intervenor witnesses came up with their figures. Lester said the formulas used by the several intervenor witnesses were totally out of the IRS and FCC guidelines, which the company must adhere to. Company Vice President Dan Matheson accused those intervenor witnesses of having corrupted the theory in determining investor expectations, and he said if the company were in fact forced to reduce rates by an originally suggested $22 million, the company would realize only a 5% rate of return on its common equity, less than half of what they consider minimal for the company needs. The Attorney General's Office and the Office on Consumer Protection are preparing for final cross-examinations, which will begin tomorrow. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
In presenting the $41 million budget, the mayor told council members the city has experienced a small recession and revenues are down. The proposed budget is $1 million larger than this year's budget. That's an increase of only 2.5%. One reason for the skimpy budget is that sales tax revenues have been low. Money from the sales tax accounts for about 1/3 of the entire city budget. So if sales are down, the city's in trouble. The city has the problem of dealing with an inflation rate higher than its rate of revenue increase. The mayor said he wants to continue programs such as free trash pickup and improvement of drainage ditches and street resurfacing. The new budget provides more than $1 million for equipment, most of which is for the sanitation department. Mayor Falmer says that's the least the city can spend on equipment and still do its job. The biggest expense in the budget is the police department allocation, which is $7 million. That's up 9% from this year. But next year's budget calls for no expansion of the police department compared to this year, when 25 new positions were created. The fire department budget is up 7% from this year. The third largest expense is the sanitation department, which has increased 10%. The mayor says greater efficiency will allow the sanitation department to do more with the money it gets. The new budget also gives every city employee a $600 raise, which amounts to a 6% increase for the average worker. There's also a proposed longevity pay hike so that hourly workers who've been with the city a long time get bigger raises. And the mayor proposes to up the yearly hazardous duty pay for police and firefighters from $600 to $1,000. Mayor Falmer also wants to put $200,000 into the city's reserve fund to be used in case of emergency. That fund already has $650,000 in it. The mayor says the budget can cover the needs of the city, but since revenues didn't increase as fast as the rate of inflation, inflation will just have to be absorbed. One method is to try and increase efficiency and get the most out of every tax dollar. The City Council will vote on the budget after a public hearing August 28th. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.